Hello, I'm Tommy Moore from the Bartitsu Lab, and in this video we're going to go back to basics and we're going to be looking at the edge of hand blow, aka the chop or the axe hand. Now, seeing as we're going back to basics, I'll remind you all that typically when we're using the edge of hand blow, we're using the bit of the hand on the pinky edge just after the wrist and just before the little finger, so this element here. Now naturally, opponents tend to crash into range or move out of range when you're striking. So it can transpire that they end up being hit with anywhere from the elbow all along this forearm. And that's fine, that's tickety-boo. The technique will still work. What you want to avoid is anything that moves you so out of range that you end up clipping people with your fingers. You know, it's not going to be disastrous, but it's not going to have any great effect. This is brilliant. This is also brilliant for an edge of hand blow. Now, these techniques were relatively ubiquitous during World War I, World War II, up until about the 70s, 80s, the edge of hand blow made up a mainstay of most combative curricula. And then it was replaced by the more popular hammer fist. But you'll notice that the hammer fist uses the exact same weapon. So again, it's just something to bear in mind that anything you can hammer fist, you can chop. Anything you can chop, you can hammer fist. It's completely up to you, it's completely up to preference, but I wanted to stick old school with the edge of hand blow. Now, if you are going old school, a lot of the World War II guides advocated a flagged thumb, the thumb being up. And that has some good reasons. It enables you to tense up this part of the hand. So if you go from here, flag the thumb, that gets some pretty decent tension. It locks it in very nicely. I sometimes prefer here or locked in, but again, I will vary as per the situation, as per what naturally comes out. What matters is you're hitting with this or with this into a place that makes sense with enough force and mass to get the job done. But flagged thumb is old school. Also has some benefits that if the thumb is flagged, when I hit, my ability to grab on to clothing, to bits of face, to whatever, is easier because the thumb is out. So I can chop and grab very easily. If my thumb is in, it's a little bit harder. I can do a thumbless grab, but if my thumb is flagged, I can grip very easily. So that's an exercise you can play with, how quickly you can grab after a hit compared to being tucked in. But again, it will be a personal preference thing. So let's go through some of the major types and usages of the edge of hand blow. Now, let's start with the vertical edge of hand blow. Now, the vertical edge of hand blow is essentially where the arm and the hand come down, and typically while standing, this is done to the collarbone. It's a nice, easy target. The collarbone is one of the few bones in the human body that you can break without a huge amount of leverage. You know, to break an arm, to break a leg, typically you need both hands, your hips, you need to be able to do that. The collarbone can be broken relatively easily, so it's a relatively decent target. And anyone that's broken their collarbone, and I'm talking to you rugby players, it feels like a bag of shit and it takes out that quadrant of your body. It can do fuck all. So, collarbone, edge of hand blow. At a longer range, let's say we're pre-conflict and I might want this for a preemptive strike. So I may be doing this from the fence, I may be doing this from a more combative stance. You know, context will define content. But either way, I'm just going to pretend I'm doing this from a casual fence for the purposes of the video. I may wish to do a passing step. So in this instance, my right leg passes my left leg. It stamps down pretty fucking hard. And just before my foot hits the ground, I connect with this onto his collarbone. So in super slow-mo, we move over, bang, and I drive my buddy in. Stamping hard. Now, the benefit of stamping hard is that I may be crunching onto his toes. If I've got a heavier boot and he's got a lighter shoe, I'm going to damage his feet, I'm going to damage the bones of his foot and maybe damage his ankle. But even without that level of damage, I've essentially got a pretty decent foot pin. So if I step into his space, I've stomped on that foot, I've pinned the foot, I have a good chance of knocking him down, helping him roll his ankle. It's just a nice way to do it. But it allows you to get in the habit of aggressively taking space. So as opposed to leaving some of you behind, all of you goes with it. And stomp down hard on that. It doesn't need to wind up, it doesn't need to come high and down low. It can launch straight out. It's best disguised if you're doing it preemptively with gestures of the hand. What's the problem? From here, gesturing, being effusive, pointing, distracting, using your hands to talk. Again, very useful tool. But stepping into invading space, and you'll notice that the hand hits just before the foot hits the ground, so I'm getting the best use of that drop step, the best use of the mass sinking into the body. Let's say I don't have the space or the room to step forward. I can still do the technique. However, I recommend it with a mass drop, so a bending of the knees. So again, I'm sinking my weight down onto the shot. Bang! Crash into that collarbone. Nice and simple. It can also transpire that we end up in this shitty grapple. We're snarling, biting, mauling, dragging, pulling, pushing, all that kind of horrible stuff. I could pop a short range one of these in. But again, it's not likely to cause any lasting damage. It's likely to just give me an inch of space from which I might be able to fire something else. So let's say my hand's here. I can still bend the knee, still get this short incidental strike in. And that might have bought me the extra couple of centimetres to put in something more final. So again, from degrees of grappling, grabbing a lump of face, clothing, belt, hair, whatever, short range usage of these is also a thing that you can do. Okay, you've also got the opportunity, let's say the opponent's been hit in the stomach, knee in the bollocks, and they've essentially bent over, they've leant over, they've taken a knee, got access to their back. Now in this instance, you obviously want to make sure that you're in a decent position, that you're based for what you want to do. You know, how you're positioned for a takedown, or how you're positioned for a disarmament, or how you're positioned to hold and cause injury and damage, they will all be very different. So you need to practice those different body positionings. But I'm holding Bob up here, just for an example. So let's say I've hit Bob in the groin, he's come down here, he's gone for a tackle, I've moved offside. I then can use these straight down strikes. So immediately these vertical attacks on his kidneys, on his spine, on the back of his neck, but always bend the knee. And obviously levels of force will dictate what is appropriate. The kidneys are a great target for this because they're painful, they stop you, but they're not hugely destructive to a human being. They just really fucking hurt. So again, the knees will bend every time I do this. I don't need to raise my hand up. I don't need to Mr. Miyagi. I just sink my body weight down. Same if we were going extreme level force, life and death force, to the back of the neck, still bending the knee. You don't need this entire motion. The knee drop will allow you to do that. Now you may also find yourself in a position where you've been grabbed, or you're about to be grabbed, or you're about to be attacked at hyper close range from behind. And you can use that same vertical motion, bang, right into the groin. Now importantly, if he's grabbing me, wrestling me, pulling me, it's easy to disrupt my balance from behind. So obviously job one is to base and get your balance, okay? You may then decide that this is a shot you want, and you want to sell that shot in. So you want to attack his groin, but even if I don't quite land it, I want him to fear that it could land. I want this motion, because if that happens, it buys me an extra couple of inches to be able to turn and do something else. So I base, I make sure I'm not too disadvantaged, I tuck my chin, so I don't want to get strangled here. I may wish to use this edge of hand motion from here. And again, sell it, drop the knees, blitz it in, give yourself a bit of space to do something else. So again, vertical edge of hand blow can also be from behind. Nice and simple. You know, would it be my high percentage? Probably not. It is absolutely an option. Elbows, sit outs, twist outs, these are all things you should absolutely consider, but it can be part of your arsenal. I think the best benefit is the psychological impact of you just immediately snapping that in. But don't be effete with it. Don't be calm. Don't be nice. You know, you really want to make him feel like he's going to get smashed in the bollocks, giving you the inches you need to break that grip, or at least loosen the grip, to allow you to do something a bit more permanent. So again, that's a little bit on your vertical edge of hand blows. Okay, now let's say we now want to move into horizontal edge of hand blows. So again, these fall into a short range and a long range category. Short range, often referred to as axe hands as opposed to edge of hands, but terminology differs and varies all across the world from system to system, practitioner to practitioner. But a horizontal edge of hand blow is typically where you angle yourself somewhat off and you fire in that shot using your hips, using your feet, using your shoulders. You want to send all of your mass into the opponent this way. Okay? Now a short version, up close, can be more akin to a thrust as opposed to a chop or a swing. It can have more of the elements of you dropping weight directly in. So it can obviously whip out using the elbow hinge. Often they are compound, so if they're very close range, the elbow is raised and you blitz these in twos or threes. So you're in that shitty mess, and then you've got the space to do something else. So a short, chopping style axe hand from here can do the business. Grapple, 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 take some shots. You know, they're unlikely to end the fight because they've not used a huge amount of body force. But at the throat or at the jaw, again, levels of force dictate what you're able or legally allowed to do. But either way, just to give you an example, you're taking your shots. Let's say in this instance, I'm taking them on the jaw. Pop, pop, pop. That is just enough to hack me a little bit of extra space and clearance to throw in something else. I can also do them in the thrusting method, like I mentioned earlier, so up close. In this instance, I'm using a more penetrative drop step motion. I'm bending the lead knee because I want to take the fight through him. So again, a more bursting style edge of hand blow. Nice and simple. For longer range, you may decide for a complete edge of hand blow. I always refer to these like you're starting an obstinate chainsaw. You're pulling it, you're ripping it across your body. You know, or you're pulling off a seatbelt as if your car had just fallen into a lake. You're doing it explosively. You're turning all of your mass into the opponent. So again, from here, I turn all of my body, all of my hips into this blow. Yeah. And you notice the weight kind of sinks. I turn, and I also sink. The hips sink, the knees sink. I'm throwing mass into him. You know, all of my mass is going in to that particular opponent. And that can happen wherever the hands are. If they're naturally from a point of supplication, they're down at your hips. If they're in the middle of a fence, doesn't really matter. You can throw it from down here or up here. So what matters is you turning the body somewhat to an angle to essentially torque yourself up, ready for that shot. Nice and simple. So you've got longer range edge of hand blows, shorter range axe hands, and also edge of hand thrusts. But they're all part of that same family. The longer ones are also great for attacks from behind. So again, I can tuck my chin, raise my shoulder, so I don't get knocked out, strangled, or stabbed in the throat. And I can bliss this through. If he's closer than I thought, he'll hit an elbow. If he's a little bit closer than I thought, he'll hit a forearm. And if he's exactly where I thought he was, he'll hit an edge of hand. Doesn't really matter. It's a ubiquitous motion. That's why I like that chainsaw analogy. Keeping my chin tucked and my shoulder high. Nice and simple. Nice and simple. Obviously, with these shots, it's very important to understand your targeting. You know, am I going for the windpipe? Am I going for the arteries? Am I going for the side of the jaw? Could I potentially even be going to the temple? You know, where am I going? Am I going into the floating rib? You know, understand where you want to hit with this. It's a gross motor tool, but don't get lazy. If you want to hit him on the jawbone, aim for that jawbone. Aim for it. You know, get used to trying to be accurate. At least try to be accurate. Don't think gross motor tool, lump of human, just twat it out. You know, do try and be specific. Aim small, miss small. It's a very important thing to do. Another important area for both styles of edge of hand blow is broken energy versus fluid energy. So broken energy is where I hit and potentially retract. So I might go, that's a piece of broken energy. Fluid energy goes through. So the energy is always in motion. An example of fluid energy and broken energy from a horizontal. Broken energy, fluid energy. I can whip it straight through. And again, there are pros and cons to both. If I'm doing broken energy, it allows me to keep my hand in the zone of conflict in a bit more of an appropriate place. So I might go, for example, I've kept the hand relatively close to the fight. However, I might want fluid energy because I'm drawing, say, a torch or a mobile phone or another incidental weapon. Or I want to change up the angle a little bit. So it might be I want my hand down here because I'm going to step in and smash into the groin. There are so many variables, but broken energy, fluid energy. Another great thing about fluid energy, without sounding too tai chi about it, using all these words about energy, great thing about fluid energy is it allows me to fuck off in another direction. So I go broken fluid. This motion here might be me running towards a doorway, to my friends, to an improvised weapon, to a place of safety, any fucking thing, because I've used that fluid energy and allowed myself to already be on the sprinter's block going somewhere else. So there are pros and cons to all these different types of approaches. And again, once you've understood vertical, horizontal, fluid, broken, close range, long range, you can start to mix them all together. You can start to weave them in and out of techniques. So for example, you might do fluid energy into a chin jab. Nice and simple. Fluid energy, I've gone through, which torques my body, nice and easy for a chin jab. I might do broken energy, because then it allows me to go for the eyes. So as opposed to a chin jab in this instance, I'm clawing at the eyes. So from here, I may do fluid energy to set myself up for a punch that I might prefer. Whatever you want to do, the broken, the fluid, the long and the short, you can mix them all together. And edge of hand blows are really good because they flow very nicely. So for example, I might go horizontal, so I might go vertical, horizontal, vertical. Nice and simple. I can flow them through in any number of ways. They're very versatile tools, let alone what you can do with them when you plug in extra weapons, extra tools. Broken energy, fluid energy, into the knee, into the groin, for an example. So they're a great technique, they're really fun to play with. Don't just obsess over doing hammer fists, have an explore with edge of hand blows. You might find things that you enjoy there. They are a ubiquitous, easy to use, easy to retain tool, which translate perfectly into edged weapon usage, blunt weapon usage. Moving the hands is exactly the same. So that's a brief, basic primer on edge of hand blows. Give it a play.